The ancient structure was even more frightening from the inside than it had looked from her research ship. Mirai walked slowly through corridors that were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The walls curved up and up until they disappeared into darkness above her head. Strange symbols glowed softly along the walls, giving just enough light to see where she was going. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space. The sound made her feel even more alone. She tried not to think about the fact that she might be the only living thing for millions of miles in any direction. The transport pilot had helped her find a room that still had working life support. It was a big round chamber with a high ceiling covered in more of the glowing symbols. The air was cold but clean, and she could hear the soft humming of machines somewhere in the walls. The pilot had activated the basic systems and given her a small device to monitor the air quality. "This should keep you alive for a while," the pilot had said. He was another Corvan, but younger than Commander Naylock, with less gray in his stone-like skin. "I'm sorry we have to do this. It doesn't feel right." "Then don't do it," Mirai had begged one last time. "Take me back to the ship. I promise I'll never tell anyone about the weapons." The pilot had looked sad, but he shook his head. "I have my orders. I'm sorry." Then he left, and Mirai heard the sound of his transport ship flying away, leaving her completely alone. That had been 3 days ago. Now Mirai sat on the floor of the chamber, eating her carefully rationed food and trying to figure out how to survive. She had already learned several important things about her new prison. First, the structure was much bigger than anyone had realized. It wasn't just one building floating in space. It was more like a small city, with hundreds of rooms and corridors connected by lift tubes that still worked. Some areas had no power at all and were completely dark and cold. Other areas, like the room where she was staying, still had basic life support running. Second, the ancient people who built this place had been very different from any species she knew about. They were tall, maybe 8 feet high, and they had long arms and legs. She could tell this from the size of the doorways and the height of the tables and chairs she had found. Their art showed them with 4 eyes and skin that looked smooth like metal. Third, and most important, they had left behind thousands of recordings, not just about weapons and dark matter, but about their entire civilization. Mirai had found what looked like a library, with walls covered in crystal screens that still worked. When she touched them, they showed her images and played sounds in a language she was slowly learning to understand. The recordings told an amazing story. The ancient people called themselves the Forerunners, and they had been explorers and builders, not warriors. They had traveled to hundreds of worlds, making contact with other species and sharing knowledge. They had built beautiful cities on dozens of planets, with gardens that could grow food in any environment and machines that could clean polluted air and water. But something had gone wrong. The later recordings showed the Forerunners becoming worried and scared. Other species in the galaxy had learned about their advanced technology and decided that the Forerunners were too dangerous to be allowed to live. One by one, alliances formed against them. Trade stopped. Diplomatic relations ended. Finally, wars began. "We never wanted to fight," said one recording that Mirai had translated. The image showed a tall Forerunner with wise, sad eyes. "We offered to share our technology freely with everyone. We wanted to help other species build better worlds for themselves, but they saw our gifts as threats. They decided that no one should have such power, not even us." The Forerunners had tried to defend themselves, but they were outnumbered. Planet after planet fell to the combined fleets of their enemies. In the end, the survivors had loaded their most important knowledge onto huge structures like this one and sent them out into deep space, hoping that someday someone would find them and learn from their mistakes. "If you are hearing this," the recording continued, "then we are probably gone. We hope that whoever finds our knowledge will be wiser than we were. We hope you will use what we learned to build instead of destroy, to help instead of harm." Mirai wiped tears from her eyes as she watched. The Forerunner's story reminded her of her own situation. They had been abandoned by everyone they thought were friends, just like she had been. The only difference was that they had committed no crime except being too advanced for other species to feel comfortable around them. She spent her 4th day exploring more of the structure, looking for anything that might help her survive longer. Her food would run out soon, and she wasn't sure how much longer the life support systems would keep working. Some of the machines made worrying sounds like they were old and tired. In a section she hadn't visited before, she found something that made her heart race with excitement. It was a room full of growing chambers, like the hydroponic gardens used on research ships. Most of them were empty and dark, but a few still had power. When she looked closer, she found that some still contained seeds. The Forerunners had been preparing for a long journey through space, so they had brought seeds from their home worlds. Mirai carefully planted some of the seeds in the working chambers, using water she found in storage tanks. She didn't know if they would grow after sitting dormant for thousands of years, but it was worth trying. On her 7th day alone, she made an even more important discovery. While exploring the deepest parts of the structure, she found what could only be described as a control room. The walls were covered with screens and control panels, most of them dark and dead. But in the center of the room stood a large chair surrounded by glowing displays that were still active. When she sat in the chair, the displays came to life around her. Suddenly, she could see outside the structure in all directions. She could monitor its power levels, life support, and structural integrity. Most importantly, she could see that the structure was moving. It was falling toward a star. Mirai's hands shook as she read the displays. The structure's orbit was decaying. It had been slowly spiraling inward for thousands of years, and now it was getting close to the point where the star's gravity would pull it in completely. According to the computer, she had maybe 2 months before the structure would be torn apart by tidal forces and burned up in the star's atmosphere. Her former crewmates hadn't just abandoned her. They had left her to die in the most horrible way possible. For the first time since being abandoned, Mirai cried hard and long. She cried for herself, for the Forerunners, and for the unfairness of it all. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she sat in the control chair and stared at the star that would soon kill her. But as the days passed, something changed inside her. The Forerunners hadn't given up even when everyone turned against them. They had kept working, kept building, kept hoping that their knowledge would survive even if they didn't. The least she could do was follow their example. She started recording messages of her own, not angry messages about how unfairly she had been treated, but recordings about what she had learned. She described the Forerunner civilization, their art, their philosophy, their dreams of a galaxy where different species worked together instead of fearing each other. "I don't know if anyone will ever find these recordings," she said into the camera. "But if you do, please remember that the Forerunners were good people. They wanted to help, not hurt. They were destroyed by fear and suspicion, not by any evil they had done." The seeds she had planted started to grow. It was a small victory, but it made her happy. The Forerunner food plants were strange but nutritious. They might help her live a little longer, though probably not long enough to escape her fate. On her 20th day alone, something wonderful happened. She discovered that the structure had a communication system that still worked. It was very weak and couldn't reach very far, but it could send out a basic distress signal. She programmed it to broadcast her location and a simple message asking for help. She didn't really believe anyone would hear it. The structure was far from any regular space routes, in a part of the galaxy where few ships traveled. But it made her feel better to know that she was trying. As she sat in the control room each day, watching the star get slowly larger and brighter, she continued translating Forerunner records. She learned about their music, which was based on mathematical patterns that created harmony between different tones. She learned about their philosophy, which taught that all intelligent life was connected and should help each other grow and learn. She learned about their greatest invention, a way to travel faster than light that didn't require the dangerous fuel most starships used. If other species had this technology, they could explore the galaxy more safely and cheaply. But the Forerunners had never had the chance to share it before they were destroyed. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same species that had abandoned her because they feared humans would get dangerous technology were missing out on peaceful technology that could benefit everyone. Their fear had made them cruel, and their cruelty was making them miss out on wonderful discoveries. As her 31st day alone began, Mirai sat in the control chair and looked at the star one more time. It was noticeably bigger now, and she could see solar flares dancing on its surface. Mirai pressed her face against the cold metal wall and listened to the strange humming sound that came from deep inside the ancient structure. Her breath made small clouds in the chilly air of the research ship's lab. She had been studying this mysterious object for 3 weeks now, and every day brought new surprises. The structure was huge, so huge that their ship, the Harmony's Edge, looked like a tiny bug next to it. It floated in empty space near the edge of the galaxy, where few ships ever traveled. Mirai's team had found it by accident while looking for new planets to study. Any new discoveries today? Asked Dr. Vex, one of the insect-like Thektar scientists. His forearms moved quickly as he worked at his computer. The Thektar were known across the galaxy for being very smart, but they always seemed nervous about everything. Mirai smiled and held up a small device that glowed with soft blue light. I think I found something amazing. This piece of metal from the structure contains elements that don't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The computer says it's impossible, but here it is. Dr. Vex's big compound eyes focused on the device. His antennae twitched with worry. Impossible elements usually mean dangerous technology. Are you sure we should be studying this? Before Mirai could answer, the lab door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Tesh Nalak walked in, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the metal floor. The Corvan warrior was tall and strong, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed red when he was angry. Right now those eyes were very bright, Dr. Kang, the commander said in his deep voice. Report to the main meeting room immediately. All senior staff are required to attend. Mirai looked confused. Is something wrong? Did I do something bad? Just come, now. The commander's tone left no room for questions. Mirai followed him through the ship's narrow hallways. Other crew members they passed looked worried and whispered to each other in their own languages. The ship carried scientists from 5 different species, all working together for the Galactic Coalition's research program. Usually everyone got along well, but today something felt different. The main meeting room was crowded when they arrived. All the senior staff were there. Dr. Crystal Song, one of the beautiful luminari whose body was made of living crystal, stood near the big viewing screen. Her usually bright glow was dim, which meant she was upset about something. Captain Thix, a small but very smart member of the Arxian race, sat at the head of the table with his tentacles wrapped nervously around his chair. Please sit, Dr. Kang, Captain Thix said, pointing to an empty chair in the middle of the room. Mirai sat down and looked around at all the faces watching her. She felt like she was in trouble, but she couldn't think of anything she had done wrong. She had always been careful with her research and followed all the safety rules. Dr. Crystal Song stepped forward, her crystal body making soft ringing sounds as she moved. Mirai, we need to talk about your research. We've been looking at your reports and we're worried about what you found. Worried? But I thought my work was helping everyone understand the structure better. Commander Nalok crossed his arms over his broad chest. Your work has revealed something dangerous. This structure doesn't just contain unknown elements. It contains technology that could be used to make weapons. Weapons more powerful than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Mirai's heart started beating faster. Weapons? But I didn't find any weapons. I found beautiful art, strange machines, and records from an ancient civilization. Nothing that looked like weapons. Dr. Vex's antennae drooped with sadness. The elements you discovered, Mirai. Our computers ran tests on them. They can be used to control dark matter. Do you know what that means? Mirai shook her head. She was good at studying alien cultures and artifacts, but physics was not her strongest subject. Captain Thix leaned forward. Dark matter makes up most of the universe, but we can't normally touch it or control it. If someone could control dark matter, they could destroy entire star systems with ease. They could make weapons that would make our strongest warships look like toys. But that's not what these people were doing, Mirai said quickly. The records I've translated show they were peaceful. They used their technology to build beautiful cities and explore space. They weren't warriors. That doesn't matter, Commander Nalok said, his voice getting louder. What matters is that this technology exists and now you know about it. Your research reports contain detailed information about how to find and use these elements. Dr. Crystal Song's glow got even dimmer. We've been talking, Mirai, all of us. We're scared about what would happen if certain species learned about this technology. Certain species? Mirai felt cold fear creeping up her spine. What do you mean? The humans, Dr. Vex whispered, as if saying the name too loudly would make them appear. If the humans learned about dark matter weapons, they would use them. We all know how violent and aggressive they are. Mirai stood up quickly, her chair falling backward with a crash. That's not fair. I've read about humans. Yes, they can be fierce in war, but they're also brave and kind. They've helped other species many times. They're dangerous, Commander Nalok said firmly. Every species in the galaxy knows this. They solve every problem with violence. If they had dark matter weapons, they would conquer everyone. Captain Thix nodded sadly. We've made a decision, Mirai. For the safety of the galaxy, your research must be stopped. The information you've gathered must be destroyed. But this is history, Mirai cried. This ancient civilization left us incredible knowledge about art, science, and philosophy. We can't just destroy it. We can and we will, Dr. Crystal Song said. But there's another problem. You've memorized too much of the information. Your people, the Villani, have perfect memory. Even if we destroy your notes, you would still know how to find and use this technology. Mirai looked around the room at all the faces she had thought were her friends. Now they all looked cold and distant. What are you saying? Commander Naylock stepped closer to her. We're saying that you know too much. You're a security risk. If you ever met a human and told them what you know, it could mean the end of galactic peace. I would never do that. I'm a scientist, not a spy. I just want to learn and share knowledge with everyone. We can't take that risk, Captain Thix said quietly. We've voted, Mirai, all of us. The decision is final. What decision? Mirai's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Vex couldn't look at her as he spoke. We're going to leave you on the ancient structure. There's some basic life support there that we can activate. You'll have food and air for a while. Mirai felt the world spinning around her. You're going to abandon me? Leave me to die? It's for the greater good, Commander Naylock said, but his voice didn't sound as confident as before. The needs of billions of people across the galaxy are more important than the needs of one person. Please, Mirai begged, tears starting to roll down her face. I promise I won't tell anyone about the weapons. I'll only share the peaceful knowledge. The art, the music, the poetry. Please don't leave me alone. Dr. Crystal Song's glow flickered sadly. We're sorry, Mirai, we really are. But we can't trust you with this secret. It's too dangerous. 2 security guards came into the room. They were both Corvin warriors like Commander Naylock, big and strong and armed with energy weapons. They walked toward Mirai slowly like they didn't really want to do this job. Come with us, one of them said gently. We'll help you pack some supplies. Miri didn't fight. What was the point? She was small and weak compared to the Corvin guards. She was outnumbered by people she had thought were her friends. As they led her out of the meeting room, she heard Dr. Vex say quietly, I don't feel good about this. None of us do, Captain Thix replied. But sometimes good people have to make hard choices. An hour later, Mirai found herself standing in the docking bay next to a small transport ship. She had a bag with some clothes, some basic tools, and food that would last maybe 2 weeks if she was careful. The guards had also given her a small device that could turn on the life support systems in the ancient structure. Commander Naylock stood nearby, watching the preparations. He looked uncomfortable, like he had eaten something bad. Commander, Mirai said quietly, if you're having second thoughts, it's not too late to change your mind. He looked at her for a long moment. For just a second, she thought she saw doubt in his red eyes, but then his face became hard again. Get in the transport, he said. The pilot will take you to the structure and help you get inside. After that, you're on your own. As the transport ship carried her away from the Harmony's edge, Mirai pressed her face against the small window and watched her former home get smaller and smaller. Soon it was just a tiny dot of light, and then it was gone completely. She was alone with her fear and the cold ancient structure that would either be her new home or her tomb. Captain Lee Do-hyun was drinking his morning coffee and reading reports when the ship's communication officer called his name. The bridge of the Wanderer's Dream was quiet in the early shift, with only essential crew members on duty. Most of the exploration vessel's crew of 40 humans were still sleeping or eating breakfast. Captain, said Communications Officer Park Ji-won, looking up from her station with a confused expression. I'm picking up a very weak distress signal. It's coming from the edge of the system near that old star. Lee put down his coffee mug and walked over to her station. The Wanderer's Dream had been exploring this remote part of the galaxy for 6 months, looking for new planets that might be suitable for human colonies. They rarely encountered other ships out here, and certainly not ships in distress. Can you clean up the signal? He asked. Ji-won worked at her controls for several minutes, adjusting frequencies and filtering out background noise. Finally, a voice came through the speakers. It was weak and filled with static, but clearly the voice of someone asking for help. This is Dr. Kang, Mirai of the Galactic Coalition research vessel Harmony's Edge. I have been stranded on an ancient structure in grid reference 7745 Delta. My life support is failing, and the structure is falling toward the star. Please, if anyone receives this message, I need help. Lee frowned. He had never heard of the species named Kang before. and the message was being repeated in several different languages. Some he recognized, others he didn't. "How long has this signal been broadcasting?" he asked. "Hard to tell, sir. Based on the signal degradation, I'd guess at least 2 weeks, maybe longer." Dr. Kim Soman, the ship's xenoarchaeologist, had been working at a nearby station and overheard the conversation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had studied dozens of alien cultures. "Captain, I recognize some of those languages. They're used by coalition species. This person might be from one of the races we've been trying to make contact with." Lee nodded thoughtfully. Humanity had been trying to join the Galactic Coalition for over a decade, but most of the member species seemed suspicious of humans. They had been polite but distant in their few diplomatic meetings, always making excuses for why humans couldn't be accepted as members yet. "Can we determine exactly where this signal is coming from?" he asked. Engineer Park Jae-won looked up from the navigation station where he had been listening. "I can triangulate the source, sir. Give me a few minutes." He was the youngest member of the senior crew but brilliant with technology and mathematics. While Jae-won worked, Lee called his senior staff to the bridge. Security Chief Yoon Haejin arrived first. She was a former military officer who had served in several conflicts before joining the exploration service. Her job was to keep the crew safe, which sometimes meant advising against risky rescue missions. "What's the situation, Captain?" she asked. Lee explained about the distress signal while Jae-won continued his calculations. Dr. Kim listened carefully to the recorded message several more times, trying to understand more of the alien languages. "I think the person sending this message is Villani," she said finally. "They're a peaceful species known for their scientific abilities. If this Dr. Kang is really from a coalition research ship, she might have valuable information about the political situation in this part of the galaxy." Medical Officer Dr. Choi Yoonji arrived on the bridge just as Engineer Jae-won finished his calculations. "Got it, Captain. The signal is coming from a large artificial structure about 6 light-years from here. It's in a decaying orbit around a red giant star." "How large?" Lee asked. "Huge. Maybe 50 kilometers long. It's definitely not a normal spaceship." Dr. Kim's eyes lit up with excitement. "An ancient alien structure?" "Captain, this could be one of the most important archaeological discoveries in human history." Security Chief Yoon looked less excited. "It could also be a trap. Why would coalition species abandon one of their own? And why ask for human help when they've been avoiding us for years?" Lee considered both points. As an exploration captain, he was naturally curious about new discoveries. But he was also responsible for the safety of his crew. "How long would it take us to reach the structure?" he asked. "At maximum jump speed, about 18 hours, Jae-won replied. "And how much time does Dr. Kang have before the structure falls into the star?" Jae-won did some quick calculations. Based on the orbital decay rate, maybe 2 weeks. 3 at the most. Dr. Choi spoke up for the first time. "Captain, if someone has been stranded for weeks with failing life support, they probably need medical attention immediately. Every day we delay could mean the difference between life and death." Lee made his decision quickly. "Set course for the structure. Maximum jump speed. Send a message to Earth Command informing them of our change in mission status." "Sir," Security Chief Yoon said quietly, "shouldn't we contact Earth Command first and ask for permission? This could affect human relations with the Coalition." "There's no time," Lee replied. "By the time we send a message to Earth and wait for a reply, Dr. Kang could be dead. We can worry about politics later." The crew moved quickly to prepare for the jump to hyperspace. As they worked, Lee retreated to his private office and sent a message to Admiral Cho Jin-soo, the head of Earth's Deep Space Command. "Admiral," he said to the recording device, "we've received a distress signal from what appears to be a coalition scientist stranded on an ancient alien structure. The situation appears critical, and we're the only ship in position to attempt a rescue. I'm proceeding immediately. We'll report as soon as possible. Lee out." 18 hours later, the Wanderer's Dream dropped out of hyperspace near the red giant star. The ancient structure was even more impressive than Jae-won's long-range scans had indicated. It was enormous, clearly built by a highly advanced civilization, and it was indeed falling slowly toward the star. "I'm reading one life sign," Dr. Choi reported from her medical scanners. "Weak but stable. Definitely alive. The structure has some kind of power source that's still working," Engineer Jae-won added. "Limited life support in several sections. Whoever built this thing knew what they were doing." Captain Lee opened a communication channel and broadcast on the same frequency they had received the distress signal. Dr. Kang, this is Captain Lee Do-Yun of the human exploration vessel Wanderer's Dream. We have received your distress call and are here to help. Please respond if you can hear this message. For several minutes there was no response. Then through heavy static came a voice so weak they could barely hear it. This is Mira, you came. I can't believe someone actually came. Dr. Kim leaned forward eagerly. Dr. Kang, we're going to get you out of there. Can you tell us about your situation? I've been alone for 5 weeks, Mireille's voice cracked with emotion. The coalition ship left me here because they thought I knew too much about dangerous technology. But I'm not dangerous. I'm just a researcher who wanted to learn about the ancient people who built this place. Security Chief Yoon and Captain Lee exchanged glances. The coalition had abandoned one of their own people to die. That didn't match the image of peaceful ethical species that humanity had been given. Dr. Kang, Lee said gently, we're going to need some time to figure out how to safely extract you from the structure. Can you hold on a little longer? I don't know, Mireille replied honestly. Some of my life support systems failed yesterday, and the structure is getting closer to the star. I can see solar flares outside my windows now. Engineer Jaewon was already running calculations. Captain, we have a problem. The structure is too big to tow away from the star, and it's too close to the star for us to safely dock with it. The radiation levels are getting dangerous. What are our options? Lee asked. We could try to extract Dr. Kang with a small shuttle, but the structure's hull is very thick. We'd need to find an existing opening or cut our way in. Either way, it would be extremely dangerous. Dr. Kim had been studying the structure with the ship's sensors. Captain, I'm detecting thousands of data storage devices throughout the structure. The archaeological value of this find is incredible. We can't just abandon it. The structure is going to be destroyed anyway, Security Chief Yoon pointed out. Our priority should be saving Dr. Kang's life. Lee nodded, but he could see the disappointment in Dr. Kim's eyes. As a scientist herself, she understood how devastating it would be to lose such an important archaeological site. Dr. Kang, he said into the communicator, we're going to attempt a rescue, but it's going to be dangerous. We'll need you to help us from inside the structure. Are you strong enough to move around? I think so, Mireille replied. The ancient people left emergency suits that I can use. And, Captain? Thank you. I know you don't have any reason to help someone from a species that isn't even allied with humans. Lee smiled even though she couldn't see him. We help because it's the right thing to do. That's what humans do. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Wanderer's Dream worked frantically to develop a rescue plan. The structure was falling faster toward the star as the gravity well grew stronger. They had maybe 72 hours before the radiation levels became lethal, even to their heavily shielded ship. Engineer Jaewon proposed using the ship's mining equipment to cut through the structure's hull. The rescue operation began at dawn, ship time. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Wanderer's Dream, watching as Engineer Park Jaewon made final adjustments to their plan. The ancient structure filled their viewing screen, so close now that they could see details on its surface. Solar radiation from the nearby star made the metal glow with a dull red heat. Radiation levels are getting worse by the hour, reported Dr. Choi from her medical station. We have maybe 18 hours before our shields won't be enough to protect us. Lee nodded grimly. Their original estimate of 72 hours had been too optimistic. The structure was falling faster than expected, pulled by the star's increasingly strong gravity. Dr. Kang, he said into the communicator, how are you holding up? Mirai's voice came back weak but determined. I'm ready, Captain. I found the closest airlock to my position. It's about 2 kilometers from where I've been staying, but I think I can make it there in the environmental suit I found. Dr. Kim had spent all night studying the structure's layout from their sensor readings. Mirai, be very careful in those corridors. Some sections have lost structural integrity. Avoid any area where you see cracks in the walls or ceiling. I understand, Mirai replied. And Dr. Kim, I've been working all night to download as much of the Forerunner database as possible onto portable storage devices. I know this discovery is important. Lee felt a surge of respect for the stranded scientist. Even facing death, she was thinking about preserving knowledge for others. It reminded him why he had wanted to help her in the first place. All right, people, he announced to the bridge crew. Operation Lighthouse is now active. Jaewon, take us to insertion point Alpha. Engineer Jaewon guided the ship closer to the structure, using the precision thrusters to match its rotation and orbital velocity. It was incredibly difficult flying. The star's gravity was constantly trying to pull them in different directions, and radiation storms kept interfering with their navigation systems. Security Chief Yoon was suiting up in the shuttle bay along with a team of volunteers. Her plan was to take a small shuttle to the structure's surface, cut through the hull with plasma torches and extract Myray from inside. It sounded simple, but everyone knew how dangerous it would be. "Captain," called Communications Officer Park Ji-won, "I'm receiving a transmission from outside the system. It's the coalition ship that abandoned Dr. Kang." Lee felt his jaw tighten with anger. "Put them on screen." The image that appeared showed Commander Tesh Nulok, the Corvan warrior who had led the decision to abandon Mirai. His red eyes glowed with what might have been embarrassment or anger. "Human vessel," he said in accented but clear English. "You are interfering with coalition business. Remove yourself from this area immediately." "Commander Nulok," Lee replied coldly. "We are conducting a humanitarian rescue operation. We will not abandon Dr. Kang the way you did." "Dr. Kang is a security risk," the Corvan commander insisted. "She possesses dangerous knowledge that could destabilize galactic peace. Her death is regrettable but necessary." Dr. Kim stepped forward angrily. "She's a scientist, not a weapon. She was trying to preserve the history of an ancient civilization. That civilization created technology that could destroy star systems," Commander Nulok shot back. "The humans must not be allowed to obtain such power." Lee had heard enough. "Commander, we're not interested in weapons. We're interested in saving a life. Now either help us or get out of our way." The Corvan's eyes flared brighter. "You will withdraw immediately, or we will consider this an act of war against the coalition." "Then I guess we're at war," Lee said simply, and cut the transmission. Security Chief Yoon's voice came over the intercom from the shuttle bay. "Captain, we just heard that exchange. Are you sure you want to continue with the mission?" Lee didn't hesitate. "Proceed with the rescue, Chief. If the coalition wants to start a war over us saving someone's life, that tells us everything we need to know about them." The shuttle launched from the Wanderer's Dream and approached the structure carefully. Yoon piloted it herself, threading between twisted metal spires and avoiding areas where the hull was buckling under stress. Behind her sat Lieutenant Han Min-ho and engineers Kim Tae-yang and Lim Soo-jin, all volunteers who had insisted on joining the mission. "Approaching the target airlock," Yoon reported. "I can see where Dr. Kang needs to exit. The hull here is about 3 meters thick. It's going to take time to cut through." As the shuttle team began their work, Engineer Jae-won made a disturbing discovery back on the ship. "Captain, I'm detecting structural failures throughout the ancient structure. The tidal forces from the star are tearing it apart. It's happening faster than we calculated." "How much time do we have?" Lee asked. "Maybe 6 hours before the section Dr. Kang is in becomes uninhabitable. Maybe less." Inside the structure, Mirai was making her way through corridors that groaned and creaked around her. The environmental suit she wore was designed for the tall Forerunner body type, so it was too big for her and difficult to move in. But it was keeping her alive as sections of the structure lost atmosphere. She carried a bag full of data storage crystals containing thousands of years of Forerunner history, science and art. The weight slowed her down, but she refused to abandon the irreplaceable information. These records might be the only thing that survived to tell the galaxy about the peaceful civilization that had been destroyed by fear and prejudice. "Captain Lee," she called over her radio, "I can hear your people cutting through the hull. The sound is echoing through the corridors. We're making good progress. Dr. Kang, just keep moving toward the airlock." As she walked, Mirai thought about the conversation she had overheard between Captain Lee and Commander Nulok. The humans were risking war with the entire coalition just to save her life. No one had ever cared about her that much before, not even her own species. The Villani were generally peaceful and kind, but they were also practical. If saving one person meant risking many, they would choose the many without hesitation. It was logical and reasonable. But the humans seemed to operate by different rules. They appeared to believe that every individual life was worth risking everything for. "Dr. Kang, this is Chief Yoon. We've cut through the outer hull layers. Are you at the airlock yet?" "Almost there," Mirai replied, though she was struggling with the oversized suit and getting tired. "I can see the airlock door ahead." What she didn't tell them was that the corridor she was in was showing signs of structural failure. Cracks ran along the walls, and she could hear the metal groaning under stress. Every step forward was a gamble that the corridor wouldn't collapse before she reached safety. Back on the Wanderer's Dream, Dr. Kim was monitoring the rescue operation while also studying the sensor readings from the ancient structure. What she found made her gasp with excitement. "Captain, I don't think this structure was just a storage facility. I think it was an ark." The Forerunners loaded their most important people and knowledge onto ships like this one and sent them into deep space to preserve their civilization. "Fascinating," Lee replied, though his attention was focused on the rescue operation. "We'll have time to study it later." "Sir, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't think we need to just save Dr. Kang. I think we might be able to save the whole structure." Engineer Jaewon looked up from his calculations. "Dr. Kim, that's impossible. The structure masses billions of tons. We don't have anything close to the power needed to alter its trajectory." "But the Forerunners do," Kim said excitedly. "I've been analyzing the power signatures from the structure. It has its own propulsion system, a very advanced one. If we could activate it, that would require someone who understands Forerunner technology," Lee pointed out. "Dr. Kang has been studying their systems for weeks. She might know how to do it." In the shuttle, Chief Yoon had finally cut through the hull completely. "Dr. Kang, we're through the outer barriers. Are you at the airlock?" "I'm here," Mireille replied. "But I'm having trouble with the controls. The system is asking for authorization codes I don't have." Engineer Kim Taeyang floated over to examine the airlock mechanism. "These controls are incredibly advanced. It's going to take time to bypass them." "Time we don't have," Lieutenant Han warned. "The coalition ship is moving closer. They might try to interfere with the rescue." Captain Lee made a quick decision. "Dr. Kang, we need to ask you something important. Dr. Kim thinks the structure might have a propulsion system that could save it from falling into the star. Do you know anything about that?" Inside her bulky environmental suit, Mireille's eyes widened. She had found references to propulsion systems in the Forerunner records, but she hadn't thought about using them to save the structure. "There's a navigation control room near the center of the ark," she said. "I found it weeks ago. The systems there control the structure's movement through space, but I don't know if they still work after all this time. Could you activate them if you had help?" Dr. Kim asked eagerly. Mireille thought about it. She had spent weeks learning to read Forerunner systems. She had translated their technical manuals and studied their operating procedures. It was possible, but it would mean delaying the rescue, she said. "And if the systems don't work, we'd all die when the structure hits the star." "Your call, Dr. Kang," Captain Lee said. 6 months after the rescue at the dying star, Mireille stood at the observation deck of the new Deep Space Research Station, watching ships from dozens of different species arriving for the dedication ceremony. The station had been built around the ancient Forerunner ark, which now sat safely in orbit around a peaceful blue star far from any conflicts. The ark had been saved that day through the combined efforts of humans and one very brave Villani scientist. When Mireille had reached the control room and managed to activate the ancient propulsion systems, the massive structure had pulled itself away from the red giant just hours before it would have been destroyed. The coalition fighters that had tried to stop the rescue had been forced to retreat when faced with technology they didn't understand. "It's amazing how much has changed," said Captain Lee Do-hyun, who now wore the uniform of an admiral. He had been promoted after his actions at the Ark and tasked with establishing humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Galactic Coalition. "The Coalition Council voted to accept human membership last month," Mireille replied with a smile. "Some of the species that once feared humans are now asking for your help with their own problems." It was true. The rescue operation had changed everything. When word spread throughout the galaxy about how humans had risked war to save a single abandoned scientist, many species began to reconsider their opinions about humanity. The fact that the humans had then shared all the peaceful Forerunner technologies freely, without asking for anything in return, had impressed even the most skeptical observers. Dr. Kim So-man approached them, carrying a data tablet filled with the latest research reports. She had been appointed as the head of the joint human-alien research team studying Forerunner technology, and her work was revolutionizing space travel and planetary engineering across the galaxy. "The latest test results are incredible," she said excitedly. The Forerunner faster-than-light drive is 50% more efficient than our best engines, and their terraforming techniques could turn dead planets into garden worlds in just a few years instead of centuries. Any word from the medical research teams? Admiral Lee asked. Dr. Choi's team has made breakthrough discoveries about Forerunner healing technology. They developed treatments that work on multiple species, not just their own. It's like they were preparing for the day when the galaxy would be united. Mirai nodded thoughtfully. She had been studying Forerunner philosophy and culture for months now, and she was convinced that they had foreseen this moment. Their final recordings spoke of hope that someday, the galaxy's species would overcome fear and prejudice to work together. Admiral Lee, announced Communications Officer Park Ji-won over the intercom. Commander Naylock is here for his appointment. Lee and Mirai exchanged glances. This would be an interesting meeting. A few minutes later, the tall Corvan warrior entered the observation lounge. Commander Tesh Nalok looked very different than he had during their confrontation at the Dying Star. His red eyes were dim with shame, and his usual confident bearing was gone. Admiral Lee, he said formally, I have come to request assignment to the Frontier Protection Program. The Frontier Protection Program was a new initiative where volunteers from various species worked together to protect human colonies and shipping routes from pirates and other threats. It was dangerous work with little glory, which made it perfect for someone seeking to make amends for past actions. Commander, Lee said carefully, are you sure about this? The work is dangerous and you'd be serving under human command. Naylock's eyes flared slightly, but with determination rather than anger. I am sure. I abandoned an innocent person to die because of fear and prejudice. Dr. Kang could have died because of my cowardice. I want to spend the rest of my life protecting innocent people instead of threatening them. Mirai stepped forward. Commander, I've already forgiven you for what happened. You don't need to punish yourself. With respect, Dr. Kang, forgiveness and redemption are different things. You can forgive me, but I must earn my redemption through action. Admiral Lee considered the request. Having an experienced Corvan warrior in the protection program would be valuable, but he wanted to make sure the commander's motives were genuine. All right, Commander, but you'll start as a junior officer, regardless of your previous rank. You'll need to prove yourself to your human commanding officers. I understand and accept those terms. As Naylock left to begin his new assignment, Dr. Kim received an urgent message on her tablet. Admiral Dr. Kang, you need to see this. We just received a transmission from the outer rim of the galaxy. The transmission was from a species that had never made contact with the Coalition before. They called themselves the Wanderers, and they had been monitoring galactic communications for years, trying to decide if they wanted to make contact. We have watched the story of the human rescue and the sharing of Forerunner knowledge, the message said. We see that perhaps the time of isolation is ending. We wish to meet with these humans and learn more about their philosophy of helping others. It was the first of many such messages. Within weeks, species that had been hiding in remote parts of the galaxy began reaching out to the Coalition, specifically requesting to meet with human representatives. The humans' actions at the Forerunner Arc had become a symbol of hope across the galaxy. 3 months later, Mirai found herself standing before the Coalition Assembly, the governing body for all member species. She had been asked to give a speech about the rescue and its aftermath, and the massive chamber was packed with representatives from over 100 different worlds. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's excellent acoustics. 6 months ago, I was abandoned to die in space because my colleagues feared what might happen if humans learned about advanced technology. Today I stand before you as living proof of what humans actually do when they encounter such knowledge. She gestured to a display screen showing images from the research station. They share it freely. They use it to help others. They risk their own lives to save strangers from species they've never even met. The chamber was completely quiet as she continued. When everyone else saw me as expendable, humans saw me as irreplaceable. They didn't save me because I was useful to them. They saved me because I was alive and needed help. This is the species you once feared. This is the species that deserves not just our respect but our partnership. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Mirai was thinking about something else. In the gallery, she could see Admiral Lee sitting with other human representatives. Next to him sat Dr. Kim, Engineer Jaewon, and many of the other crew members who had risked their lives for a stranger. After the ceremony, Mireille and Admiral Lee walked together through the station's gardens. The plants here were a mixture of species from dozens of worlds, including some grown from the ancient Forerunner seeds that Mireille had discovered in the Ark. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come?" Mireille asked. Lee considered the question seriously. "I think someone else would have come eventually. Maybe not in time to save you, but someone would have investigated the signal. The important thing is that we did come, and we learned something important about ourselves in the process." "What did you learn?" "That doing the right thing is always worth the risk, even if the consequences seem scary. Your species and the others thought they were protecting the galaxy by abandoning you, but they were actually making it smaller and more afraid." Mireille nodded. The Forerunners faced the same choice. They could have kept their technology secret and lived in isolation, but they chose to share and explore instead. It cost them their lives, but their example survived to inspire others. As they walked, they passed a memorial wall dedicated to the Forerunners. The wall contained samples of their art, music, and philosophical writings, translated into dozens of languages. It had become a popular gathering place for visitors from all over the galaxy. "Dr. Kang," Admiral Lee said, "I have something to tell you. The Coalition Council has voted to establish a new position, Ambassador for Interspecies Understanding. They want to offer it to you." Mireille stopped walking and stared at him. "Me? But I'm just a researcher. You're the person who survived being abandoned by everyone and chose to forgive rather than seek revenge. You're the person who risked her life to save irreplaceable knowledge. You're the person who has spent months teaching others about Forerunner philosophy and the importance of cooperation between species." Mireille thought about the offer as they continued their walk. The position would mean traveling throughout the galaxy, helping different species understand and trust each other. It would be challenging and sometimes dangerous work. "What would you do in my position?" she asked. Lee smiled. "I'd probably accept. The galaxy needs people who understand that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." Later that evening, Mireille stood alone on the observation deck looking out at the stars. Ships from dozens of different species moved peacefully through space around the research station, their crews working together on projects that would benefit everyone. It was the future the Forerunners had dreamed of, a galaxy where different species explored and learned together, instead of fighting and fearing each other.